On today's show, the Nets blow out the Wizards, or what was left of the Wizards, in a game that should be an embarrassment to the NBA. I'll tell you why the league needs to take a look in the mirror and why other tanking teams may force the Nets to do the same on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the #1 sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm your host, Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. This show is 100% free on all those great platforms. And on today's episode, I'm going to be recapping Brooklyn's 127-113 win over the Washington Wizards on Saturday at Barclays Center. And there's only one takeaway I have from this game right off the bat, and it's that this game was a disgrace to the NBA, it was a disgrace to basketball, and it was an embarrassing display, and I feel bad for a lot of the fans who bought tickets and were in attendance, or the fans who were watching on TV, because this is a game, it was billed as a tank fest. You know, two teams that are in the race for top draft positioning, the Nets and the Wizards, but only one team was tanking, and that was the Wizards, who put on one of the most egregious tank jobs that you're ever going to see. The Wizards had 10 inactive players in this game. They only had 8 players available, 3 of which were two-ways, and 1 of which is on a 10-day contract. So, you know, this was a Wizard showing that was an embarrassment. It was a disgrace. It was reprehensible, whatever words you want to use to describe it. And here's the thing. I don't blame them. I blame the NBA. This is an NBA problem, and Nets fans should know this all too well after last season, after what is going on this season. The tank jobs across the league have just been egregious, and the Nets honestly have come out on the wrong end of it because they haven't been willing to go to the same lengths that some of these other teams have, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But this is an embarrassment to the NBA. I mean, we are not that far into the NBA season. Like, sure, we're past the halfway point. There's about 32 games left. But, you know, we're in February. We're in early February. And the product that's on the court right now in early February in a game like this was just a disgrace. And it's not like the Wizards, I think, took this a little far in this game, literally resting like almost every impact player that they have. But they're trying to keep a draft pick that is protected and obviously owed to the New York Knicks. It's top 8 protected. And they're trying to maximize their chances at getting a generational prospect at the top of the draft, which is 4 teams, which 4 teams who are not, these glossy market teams, who aren't going to necessarily get guys via trade on like trade request lists or get free agents that are these star type guys. It's a necessary evil, and it's something that you need to do. And it's the NBA's fault. The NBA has incentivized losing to a point where teams are doing stuff like this at a point in the season where they should still be trying to play competitive basketball. And it's on the NBA to make a rule change. And there aren't necessarily easy fixes. I mean, I did an episode with Frank Isola a few weeks back where I spoke about some of the steps that I think the NBA could take. One of the things that I find really interesting in a potential solution is at a certain point in the season, the halfway point, the All-Star break, the trade deadline, whatever you want to say, you flip it and you start counting wins towards the draft lottery standings rather than losses. And I think that could go a long way because you would have teams down the stretch of the season that are doing a lot of things to win. You could also have teams at the trade deadline who are out of it, who become buyers and are trying to win instead of lose. And look, that's an issue because you're going to have some teams that are worse than others. It's going to make it difficult for some teams, but at the end of the day, it's going to disincentivize losing, and you're going to have competitive basketball, and that should be the goal. And the NBA, frankly, has taken just way too soft of a stance on a lot of this stuff. I mean, we've seen teams go egregious lengths to tank. Last season, the Utah Jazz. This season, the Jazz are still doing it. The Wizards, there's other teams, the Pacers, like there's a lot of teams that are doing this stuff. And the NBA really hasn't levied many punishments, if any. Like they gave the Jazz a $100,000 fine last season. Like, sure, like they did that. That's not enough. The NBA needs to take steps to improve the product because I think that everyone can agree, who enjoys the NBA, who loves basketball, that this is a product that has really just become embarrassing down the stretch of the season for a way too large a portion of the league. And that was the case tonight with the Wizards taking just egregious steps to ensure the loss. And I understand why the Wizards did it. They improbably won a game against the Detroit Pistons, with a lot of guys sitting out, at least down the stretch of that game. And they felt, coming into this game, they were tied with the Nets for 4th in the draft lottery standings, and they thought, we need to lose this game. Like, this is a must lose for us. And they took the steps that they needed to ensure that this was a loss for them. And that is something that the Nets, I said, I think the NBA needs to look in the mirror, and some of these other tanking teams, the Wizards, the Pacers, the Kings, they're going to also force the Nets to look in the mirror, because the Nets are trying to get, obviously, a top draft pick. They're trying to put themselves in the best position to get a top draft pick. And I don't think that they did enough to do that last season, and they ended up picking 8th. And look, I think that they've taken more steps this season to ensure that they lose some more games than they did last year. But this year, the draft class is obviously great at the top, and there is, just a group of teams that are going to be on a generational tank race down the stretch of this season. They are going to go to extreme lengths to make sure that they are near the top of the draft lottery standings. And a lot of that has to do with these pick protections, which is another step that I didn't mention before. The NBA needs to get rid of these mid-pick protections. Like, you have the Utah Jazz, who owe a top 8 protected pick to the Thunder. You have the Washington Wizards, who owe a top 8 protected pick to the New York Knicks. You now have the Indiana Pacers, who owe a top 5 and then 10 through 30 protected pick to the Los Angeles Clippers. The NBA needs to get rid of that, because that is the reason why a lot of these teams are going to be egregiously tanking down the stretch of the season. But the takeaway for the Nets is that these teams are going to go to extreme lengths. So if the Nets want to not be, 5th, 6th in the draft lottery standings this season, they want to get up into that top 3 and give themselves a really good chance at the number 1 pick, and also give themselves, the highest floor possible that they can. They're going to have to compete with these other teams, and these other teams are going to get very shameless, as we saw. We saw the Pacers do it in a recent game. We saw the Wizards do it tonight. We've seen the Jazz do it in a bunch of games. These teams are going to do that, and whether or not the Nets are going to do that, we'll see. But the Nets, if they want to get where they should be aiming to in the draft lottery standings, they're going to have to take steps like these other teams. And if the NBA comes in and they start to find teams and whatever, so be it. But they haven't done that up to this point. They haven't levied any significant punishment. So the Nets not doing that, it really is not serving them any purpose. And look, I understand if you're a fan who's not in favor of the tank, if you think that what the Wizards did tonight is disgusting, I think that also, but I also think that that's the NBA's problem. And I also think that you need to get a generational type prospect in this draft if you're the Nets. And the best way that you can try to do that is to try to lose as many games as possible. I know a lot of people say that's bad for culture, that's bad for this, that's bad for that, that's bad for the locker room. If you get that top player and you're going into next season and you have that top player, you have whatever other promising pieces you have financial flexibility, you have the draft picks, you're set up really well moving forward. And getting that top guy is way more important than any culture or anything you think you're getting by beating, a Wizards team that has 8 players available, 4 of which are 2-ways or 10-day contracts. So the Nets are going to have to take a look in the mirror. I think that they have pretty easy steps that they could take to ensure that they can stack some losses down the stretch of the season. The easiest of which would be to sit Michael Porter Jr. out, to shut him down for an extended period, which they frankly have some pretty easy excuses to do, because he has a history of back issues. He had a knee problem earlier this season. It shouldn't be that hard to do that. But the Nets are going to have to look in the mirror. They're going to have to decide how shameless they want to get about this thing, and we'll see, because they have another couple of games coming up. They have the Chicago Bulls and they have the Indiana Pacers. Those are 2 games that are going to be very winnable and are going to be very important in regard to the draft lottery standings, especially that Pacers game. But, you look at a game like tonight, sure, you can say that the Nets may not have been able to win this game no matter what they did, because the Wizards took such, lengths. But the Nets didn't sit anybody out in this game. They had every player available outside of their 3 two-way guys. And you can say, that's a pretty strange strategy. During a tanking season, you're playing the team that you're tied with in the draft lottery standings. They're going to be sitting people out, and you play everybody. Maybe the Nets looked at it and said, we're not going to be able to lose to this team. But, if you sit out Michael Porter Jr., you sit out one of Nick Claxton or Day'Ron Sharpe, you never know what can happen. The Wizards, the game was completely out of reach. They were down by 30 at halftime. The Nets hung 80 on them in the first half, but they made somewhat of a run during the second half. It's just you never know. And I think the Nets not sitting out anybody in this game, it's a strange move, and we'll see how they approach it with the Bulls game and with the Pacers game. I will say that after that, they have a 10-game stretch where they do have some difficult opponents. So they may be thinking we're going to stack some losses during that 10-game stretch, but still, to not sit anybody in this game, strange decision, and we'll see how they adjust the rest of the season, because it's only going to get more shameless from these teams like the Kings, the Pacers, the Wizards, whoever else you want to say. So we'll see how the Nets approach that. But despite this being a game where the Nets were basically playing a glorified G League team, there were some positives, particularly from some of the rookies. So I'll get into some of those, what I do think the positives you could have taken from this game were, when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, the season's heating up, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag all the way through. Whether you're watching for the highlights, the tunnel fits, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes the entire season more fun. Because every player has their bag, and with DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snacks stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely on point. There are nights where your team stresses you out. Let DoorDash become your post-game therapy. Sometimes you just need dessert now. Those late-night interviews hit, and suddenly you need chips at midnight. DoorDash is built for exactly that. If the group chat says pull up, DoorDash makes sure you show up prepared. Snacks, cups, even a phone charger for the friend who's always at 2%. From tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season, delivered right to your door. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. Guys, new year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Guys, Quo makes everything simple. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies more personal and faster. It works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free plus 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Guys, it's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season closes. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from the kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Coming back from the break, closing out today's bonus episode of Locked On Nets here on a Saturday, recapping Brooklyn's blowout win over the Skeleton Crew Washington Wizards. And look, the Nets are playing a G League team. There's no really ands, buts, qualms about that. But I still do think that you saw some positives from this game. And those really came in the form of the rookies, because when you're playing a team like this, you're playing a team that is just a Skeleton Crew squad. I'm not going to lean that much into veterans doing good things. The rookies, though, I will take something from rookie performances, because I do think, these guys are young. It's going to be important for them to get NBA minutes, to play well against any level of competition that you see. And I do think that we got two pretty encouraging rookie performances in this one, and that was from Nolan Traore and Danny Wolf. And Nolan, I think, built upon. He had his best performance of the season during that loss to the Orlando Magic on Thursday. And tonight I thought that he had another really high-level and efficient performance. I mean, if you look at the Bucks plus-minus, the BPM, he was actually a -18, which was the worst on the Nets. But this game was so wonky, with the Nets being up huge during the first half and then them kind of just taking their foot off the gas. I don't read that much into it. But if you look at the stat line for Nolan, he had 15 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 turnover, 6 of 7 from the field, and 2 of 8 from 3. So a very efficient performance from Nolan. I think that he looked confident from 3, which is going to be a big deal for him moving forward. And then also, you saw some plays where he was getting downhill. He was challenging people. He was finishing. 4 assists to 1 turnover. He's gotten the reins at point guard for this Nets team, starting alongside Yegor Dillman for the last 4 or 5 games. And for the most part, he's looked comfortable. He's looked confident handling the ball. And that's not something that was a given for Nolan Traore, because we saw him play during Summer League. We saw him play during the preseason. We saw him play during his limited NBA opportunities early in the year. And he did not look confident whatsoever. Like, he looked like he was a guy who was very unsure of himself. And then that sent him back down to the G League. He had some success down there, and he's come up. And since then, he's had some struggles, since coming back. Like, it's been up and down. But for the most part, he's looked more sure of himself. He's looked more confident. And I think that was the case tonight. And again tonight, as was the case during that Magic loss, Nolan just has some plays where he's getting downhill, and he is just a blur. He is so fast. Like, he had one play where he got the ball, off a rebound. He was taking the ball up. Somebody challenged him near half court. He spun to his right, like really quick, went downhill, just accelerated past everybody, went into a big man, and finished at the rim for an and one. And those are the plays where you're like, man, this kid has a next gear that he can kick it into down the court. And you saw him finishing over a big man. You saw him move at half court. You're just seeing some good things from him. And I think the passing, the three-point shooting, all of it, I think was a positive from Nolan tonight. And then the other rookie was Danny Wolf, who has been struggling in a big way. You could say this was the perfect get-right game for Danny Wolf. And sure, wasn't playing against the toughest competition, but still one of Danny's better performances of the season. He had 16 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and 0 turnovers, 7 of 11 from the field and 2 of 4 from 3. And Danny just looked comfortable. He looked like he was scoring in a variety of ways. The three-point shot, it looked good there. He also hit a couple of long twos. So just the jump shooting stroke, him starting to find that was nice to see, because that's going to be really big for him moving forward. I've gone over why the three-point shooting is going to be so huge for Danny, because I don't think that he's necessarily ever going to be like a really high-level two-point shooter, a high-level finisher at the NBA level with some of the things and some of the athletic limitations that he has. So with that, I think he'll be able to do some encouraging stuff as an on-ball creator, which we saw him do during this game, but he's going to have to play off the ball a lot. And that's going to, he's going to need to be a floor spacer and a three-point shooting threat in order to do that. So to see the jump shot get going a little bit was encouraging in this one. And then also to see some of the ways he was getting downhill, to see some of the ways that he was finishing around the rim, to see the playmaking. I said 6 assists and 0 turnovers. I think it was just an efficient performance from Danny Wolf. And I think that for him, even though the Nets were playing against what I said was a glorified G League squad, I do think that it was important for him to get some confidence going as the Nets move into this final third of the season. So sure, not the toughest competition, but I think that you could say that this was a get-right game for Danny, and I think that you could say that it was important for him to see the ball go through the net, to see him gain some confidence moving forward. So that was nice to see. The only other rookie we want to talk about is Ben Saraf, who's also been struggling, has looked like the worst of the Nets rookies, and I don't think that he did anything particularly amazing in this game, but he put up 10 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 turnover, 4 of 10 from the field, 1 of 3 from 3. He was a plus 32, the team best out of anybody on the Nets in this one. So it was nice to see Ben have a positive performance, to see him have a game where he was getting downhill, getting to the basket, playing with some confidence, not turning the ball over. Overall, I think all of that was good. And last guy I want to talk about is just Day'Ron Sharpe quickly, because Day'Ron Sharpe continues to dominate and just mog other second units in the bench. And sure, the second unit for the Wizards in this game was Sharif Cooper, Anthony Gill, and Keyshawn Gilbert, who's on a 10-day contract. But Day'Ron was a beast in this game. He completely dominated. He had 19 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 9 of 11 from the field. I think this was the second game in the last bunch that we've seen Day'Ron have 19 points off the bench and near double-digit rebounds. He only played 20 minutes in this one. So 19 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists in under 20 minutes. Just really impressive. And it's just kind of what Day'Ron does at this point. He just takes teams. He bullies their second units. He does it on a near nightly basis. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Nets approach Day'Ron moving forward. They have the $6 million team option on him in the second half of the season. I think that he had a career best season last year, and I think that he's continuing to build upon that, and he's continuing to look like one of the best backup centers in the league. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Nets approach Day'Ron, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Nets approach the rest of the season. With everything that I laid out in the first segment, with the way that teams are egregiously tanking, with the Nets wanting to get up into the top 3 of the draft lottery standings perceivably and give themselves a really high ceiling and also a really high floor, we'll see how they approach it. But that's all I got for you guys on today's bonus episode of Locked On Nets. If you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy my content, take a second right now, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you can do to engage is much appreciated. And that's got a couple of days off. They're going to have the Chicago Bulls before a really important tank matchup with the Indiana Pacers. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back on Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.